I used to think that the real Dark Ages was ahead of us, an endless blood-soaked battlefield piled high with the shattered skulls of players torn between the savage purity of Doom 2016 and the relentless acrobatic carnage of Doom Eternal. Their screams echoing across the hellish void between dimensions, leading us to the grounded portal of Doom the Dark Ages, conjured by Bethesda's mystic and slave to play Doom the Dark Ages early. And let me be clear, this game is fucking legendary. Few things I want to highlight instantly is piloting an Atlas is every bit as friggin' awesome and fun as you would expect. Extremely enjoyable aspect, stomping on tiny demons and siege weapons, delivering devastating blows to the point where you can literally punch the muscles off the bones of Titan-sized demons, all adding to the feeling of being a massive unit. It's incredible. The power fantasy is monstrous. From there, we are flying a fire-breathing cybernetic dragon with its own glory kill animations. It is a completely new experience I never thought we'd have in Doom. The flight feels amazing. The combat is a bit more static with a lock and dodge mechanic, however still super fresh and awesome. Running and traversing across a massive sandbox-style map with layered exploration, puzzles, insane counters, coupled with an extremely deep and complex mechanic system that offers easy accessibility for the newest Doomslayers while maintaining a huge skill gap for the industrial strength speedrunners. All of this while you're getting pumped with pure testosterone of destruction, body parts and blood flying everywhere. And what is friggin' wild is the detailed level of body mutilation and destruction, to the point that even your metal stakes stick into your enemies. And the gore is somehow even more brutal. The Doom the Dark Age is full of testosterone, dopamine and serotonin on tap, injected into your blood-brain barrier. And all this has me wanting more. I'm already an addict, and Doom the Dark Ages is my fix. A huge shout out to id Software, Bethesda, and everyone involved with facilitating early previews. Not all Slayers wear capes. So let's kick the logistics. I fast traveled to Sydney where I played an early build featuring 4 missions, noting that this is an old build. Subject to change, there were some bugs, so rest assured this is not a final product, an early build. Now we had access to 4 missions. Mission 1, kind of like an initiation, you delve into a bit of lore, get the movement, basic combat mechanics, a fairly linear map like Doom Eternal, but an excellent way to get accustomed with all the new mechanics. Mission 2, we're piloting an Atlan mech. Mission 3, flying the cybernetic dragon. Mission 4, the siege, is the main showcase for today. We were allowed to record gameplay from the 4th mission, the siege, which is what you'll see for the most part within this video, along with some B-roll provided. Now, as far as the story content goes, most of it was stripped out, and for spoiler reasons, we won't go into too much and reveal a great deal of it. Not in this video. There's a good chance these missions are connected, but most likely spread out, but every single one was action-packed and spectacular. I played on PC with a mouse and keyboard at 4K ultra settings. Unfortunately, with motion blur maxed out. Let me know in the comments if you play with motion blur. For the purpose of this video, we're going to focus in on the siege, as that is the hands-on experience I can show you, and I quickly whipped through the first 3 missions with the intention to spend more time on the siege. Now, the siege mission revolves around one core objective: destroy 5 hell portals scattered across a massive sandbox-style map. There's also 3 side missions, but right from the very start, what stands out is the sheer scale and freedom of the environment. Unlike the semi-linear corridors of the past Doom games, this level offers an open-ended structure that encourages exploration, strategy, strategy and decision making, and it all comes together really well. The map feels vast, and from what I gather, this is somewhat of an early level, so if they get bigger as we go along, expect some multi-layered, dungeon-infested, huge maps. So you're no longer funneled down a set path. Instead, you get to choose how you tackle the objectives within the majority of the levels, like Siege. Whether you want to take on major enemy encounters head-on or navigate around them to complete other tasks first, this is completely up to you now. This becomes very strategic, as done are the days of drones or returning to Doom's Fortress for upgrades and some weapons. Instead, we have a new brilliant system where you collect all the resources on the map through each level, and within those maps, you're looking for these locations marked Sentinel Shrines, because Sentinel Shrines is where we can perform our upgrades to our weapons, runes, and spend all our resources to better equip ourselves. Whether you're unlocking abilities, upgrading new weapon traits, or opening a rune, all this is now in the Sentinel Shrine system. So you run around collecting gold, which is found all over the map, much more common resource. Then we have the rubies. It's a resource we get from completing various challenges, sometimes bosses, and you rip them from these Knight Sentinel statues. And finally, the more challenging one is finding the Sentinel crystals, which unfortunately I didn't find the one in this map. However, this is what they look like. A few other things regarding currency. If we open the map, we can see that within Siege, we can get a maximum 505 gold, 4 rubies, the green armor icon, and the one below it, the orange ammo icon. These two both represent buffs that we can pick up from defeating 2 of the bosses, or what they call leaders. Defeating 1 will give us an armor increase from 60 to 70 at this stage, and the ammo capacity for the spike is increased. So the different levels will provide opportunities to increase the ammo capacity for various weapons, as well as increase your armor, similar to previous games, but integrated a little bit differently. Also worth pointing out that you still have all the cool items to collect. I found the little miniature Mancubus, but failed to record it. You'll also note that there's secret locations indicated by question marks. These question marks aren't revealed on the map until you've either gone near the area or are within the vicinity. So lots of cool exploration. In this map, there's 11 sort of secret areas or secret things to discover, which will certainly encourage a lot of exploration. Now let's dive into the weapon system, starting with the melee. It is a beautiful infusion of shield and melee attack, then coupled with firing off some devastating rounds. The shield can only take so much damage, indicated on the bottom left. As you sustain too much damage, you will completely deplete the shield's defensive capabilities, rendering it useless until it recharges. So you have to be mindful of how much damage you can take. There's a ton of different upgrades too, which we'll cover in another video of all the different weapons and melee weapons, but throwing the shield around, using it to close distance, is a glorious new fun mechanic that just feels like it's never going to get old. You couple that with the melee system, the Gauntlet, and the Flail, which work somewhat similar to some of the mechanics in the other Doom games, where you can use the Flail or Gauntlet 3 times in a row before it's going to have to recharge. So you can't use them indefinitely. There are plenty of melee recharge pickups all over the map, indicated by these gauntlet looking drops. You pick those up, it's going to recharge your melee attack, regardless of which melee weapon you're using. Speaking about all the different pickups, you should be able to change the glowing effect from my understanding, and it does appear that the health gauntlet and the ammo drops do respawn after a bit of time, because some of the areas you are locked into once you enter them, kind of have to complete them before you can leave as a part of like a challenge of these bosses, what they call leaders, but we'll come to that very soon. So that's just worth noting. Now I was able to muck around with the Gauntlet, the Flail, the Shield, and the combination of all the melee weapons is superb. It completely changes the gameplay, particularly having the Shield where you can close the gap really quickly, which makes the movement very unique again. Still lots of jumping and fast movement, but feels very different to the other 2 games. The Flail is a very interesting weapon where you can basically swing it across and do like a wide area range of damage as you basically swing it across the screen, and it can collect multiple demons. The Flail will be unlocked a little bit later. You start off with the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet focuses on single target damage with escalating power on each combo strike, which brings me to how you change weapons within Doom, the Dark Ages. This is a different sort of approach. Now you basically have all the weapons available to you at all times, even to the point where you're able to change the weapon's firing mode or traits as you're running around the map. So you have a very dynamic infusion of how you use your complete loadout now, having everything accessible, being able to switch depending on which enemies you encounter, And this makes a lot of sense because it is a sandbox. Loading in and not having everything you need could present a different kind of challenge, whereas now everything that you've unlocked you can have access to. So for example, if we want to change between the Gauntlet and the Flail, it's as simple as opening the menu, hitting equipped, while having Flail selected, and bing bada boom, you can change the melee weapons on the fly. Same goes for all your weapons. We can now open to our arsenal and say switch between the super shotgun or the combat shotgun. And same goes for the other weapons that basically have the same kind of functionality. So if we wanted to switch to the twin barrel, we can go from the accelerator, high rate of fire weapon with a moderate spread that is effective to close to mid range. And on the fly, we can just hit R and flick it to the twin barrel if we've unlocked that weapon, which in all these cases, these switchable weapons are just sort of more advanced or modifications onto the original platform of that weapon, and those will either have to be unlocked or found. Now, the cool thing about the weapons is that they've gone to the old traditional way of finding weapons, having a cool animation cutscene of us finding it, picking it up, similar to Doom 2016. It's refreshing to see that back added. And from what I can see with the weapons is, as we find more of them, they will all appear under the arsenal, which should all be accessible pretty much at any time or any point of the game. So we have the Sentinel Shrines providing upgrades to the melee and weapons. We have all the weapons being able to be switchable, making for a very dynamic battlefield. So let's dive into the firearms as well as the combat, as there's been quite a lot of changes around these mechanics. So when it comes to the combat, there is a huge emphasis on using the shield to parry objects at a multitude of different enemies, as well as many of the enemies will fire multiple rounds at the same time, whether it be like a shield that flies towards you or balls of fire. You want to be dodging all of these projectiles. However, you do want to be trying to parry all the green projectiles, as that will fire straight towards the enemy that launched it at you. It would be cool if you could somehow deflect it to a different enemy, but I didn't figure that out. I'm not sure if that's a mechanic. There's a ton of new enemies as well, and there's an armor system which we'll touch on very soon, but the gameplay is very different to the other Doom games, which is very refreshing. Let's talk about the weapons. So the weapons I got to relatively briefly try was the pulverizer, the twin barrel, the accelerator, the impaler, shredder, super shotgun, combat shotgun. All of the weapons come with their own upgrade, even if they're just variations of the same platform. There is a ton of different variety between all the different weapons and their upgrades, and most of the weapon perks tend to have two different modes. So for instance, the accelerator, there's one mode called Heat Blast. Releasing left mouse click at maximum charge fires a damaging blast that consumes all remaining charges. Demons killed by the heat blast drop accelerator ammo, or within that same weapon perk we can switch it to Mega Cell. The time it takes for the accelerator to lose charge is increased, meaning we'll be able to get off more rounds, but both of those combos can be unlocked at the same time, and pretty much all the weapons are sort of set out like that. We'll go through all the upgrades and weapons in a great amount of detail in another video. The main takeaway is that all the weapons have very unique purposes, playstyles, attributes, and perks, creating a really cool foundation on how you strategize and use specific weapons to take on the different challenges. By far the most enjoyable weapon was the pulverizer. Crushing skulls and spitting out bones is one of the glorious weapons I've ever used in Doom. Twin barrel is an insanely powerful weapon, having really good range. But one thing on the range that's worth noting is that the bullets don't render or hit enemies after a certain distance. Now, I'm not sure if this is intended, but it well might be to stop us sitting somewhere across a map and hitting enemies that would not be targeting us. But it'd be really cool if we could get some kind of sniper rifle within Doom, or something that has a lot longer range, as I found myself trying to attack enemies at distance and the bullets just didn't seem to connect. So an interesting mechanic there. However, the twin barrel has some absolute punishing damage and attributes to electric shock damage that can create chain effects, and it seems like a very useful weapon, particularly because it has really good range, high fire rate. The Impaler was another terrific weapon, particularly getting the Chrono Spike upgrade, where holding left mouse click will slow down time, allowing us to impale enemies perfectly with precision, which has that awesome effect of just nailing them to the wall. The Accelerator is basically a version of the twin barrel. It has a lot of utility, but I didn't use this weapon too much. The Super Shotgun is, as always, just a glorious weapon to use. It feels fantastic, and the level of destruction it dishes out is pure horrific glory, gore, goodness. Everything that you would expect between the Combat Shotgun and the Super Shotgun. This time the Combat Shotgun has a lot more utility and a lot more various upgrades. For instance, there's Flare Up. The Combat Shotgun applies burn to photo demons. Tune Up, the Combat Shotgun fires in rapid 3-round burst, which is devastating. You got Blast, burn applied by the combat shotgun, causes demons to explode on death, which is just so much fun. So the combat shotgun itself feels quite fresh. So just providing a little bit more of a comment on how movement feels, as that's a really important aspect and was a big concern of mine, particularly with the whole grounded, the Dark Ages experience that we've been told about. However, all the trailers and game footage that we've seen has been only trying to highlight that fact, being cinematic and keeping you grounded, whereas in reality, you're jumping around like a madman, as well as heavily relying on your shield. It will take a while to adjust to the different gameplay style, as you do have to use your shield a lot more. But I found the whole movement and combat just so insanely intoxicating and fun. You're jumping around using your shield to gain a huge amount of distance. You can also cancel out of the shield and then fling in with your flail or gauntlet, and I presume your spiked mace. So the combat is going to be very interesting to see how far people can take it. Because of this launching mechanism with the shield, it becomes very interesting. Very high tempo, doesn't feel grounded, but at the same time it does, as you'll have enemies that will be perched up on higher platforms, try to jump on top of them, but without that double jump, you really need to use the shield jump, and that's where you'll gain this sense of feeling much more grounded. Not being able to conquer all the terrain without using a combination of different techniques and abilities that are in play, which really keeps the tempo very high, tactical, and extremely engaging. Particularly when you enter in these areas where you have to defeat a boss. And within this map, you have two areas that when you enter, you're shut in and you can't escape these areas. These encounters are called leader encounters, and they've changed it up. So you won't be able to kill the boss, the leader, without depleting its morale meter. And the way you can deplete the morale meter is by taking out all the other enemies within the given area, forcing you to engage with everything else besides the boss, as you can't really do any damage to it until we've depleted the morale meter. You'll also get enemies spawning in all around you, making for some very interesting combat mechanics. Once you have depleted the morale meter, it's fair game and you can take on the boss, as the enemy have an armor system where they'll start off looking like normal shields. The more damage they sustain, they basically get heated, and once they get piping red hot, they're very close to breaking. When you see them like that, you can tend to use your shield to cut down those enemies in their final state of armor depletion, whereas if you try to throw your shield at their shield straight away, it's just going to bounce off. Doom the Dark Ages really does offer a completely unique, however somewhat similar experience, but it is absolutely so freaking addictive. If you liked Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal, this game is just going to blow people away. It's going to have something here for everyone. The combat doesn't feel slow at all. The exploration is rewarding. The new upgrade system and weapon flexibility adds a lot of strategic depth and somewhat forgiving aspect to it, allowing us to muck around and play with all the various weapons at our fingertips. In summary, Doom the Dark Ages, I think, is going to be by far the best entry into the Doom universe that we've seen to date. We have the power fantasy of fighting in titans and flying on the cybernetic dragon, which really changes the tempo and pacing of all the missions. You'll find yourself exploring in a huge map. Then the next mission, you're stomping on tiny demons or kicking giant-sized titan demons, ripping flesh off their bones, to then finding more close combat scenarios where the more traditional levels of Doom 2016 and Eternal have common ground. And I believe in some missions you're doing like a combination of all these different activities. So they've really tried to change the pacing. They've been able to create a new experience once again. And it even feels better, which is crazy to me. They've really nailed it. At least this is just in my experience, in my opinion. I really did not want to stop playing. It is addictive, fun gameplay. There is so much more to cover and talk about, all the things that we've learned. But just to give you a taste of what my experience was, I hope this has been helpful. And there's a lot more Doom the Dark Age content coming. If you got anything out of this, consider liking and subscribing. It goes a really long way. Stick around for the journey as we delve into all the various weapons, their upgrades, some of the new enemies,